Hello everyone, welcome to Pepcoding. In this video, we will look at the question Battleship in board. Okay, so let's see. In this question, we are given a grid of m cross n, and in this grid we have dots and x's, right? We have dot values and x values. So these dots represent water or nothing, and these x's represent battleships. Okay, so let's say I have a case like this. Right, I have a case like this and the rest of them are dots. The rest of them are dots, right? So in this case we have to find how many battleships are there, right? In this question we have to find how many battleships are on the grid. But this single battleship or this single x does not represent one single battleship, right? If they are in a straight line like this, we can say that this is a battleship and then this is going to be a battleship. So my answer for this test case is going to be 2. Okay, let's say I have something like this. Right, now my answer is going to be 1, 2 and 3. Right, my answer will be 3. Let's say I have a test case like this. Here my answer, this is not a valid test case, because if I look it like this, then I have two ships, right? I have two battleships. But if I see like this, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, right? I have 5 battleships. So this is not a valid test case, because we cannot say how many battleships are there based on horizontal or vertical, right? Both of them are giving me different answers. So what is going to be the approach for this question? Okay, how am I going to solve this question? In this question, we'll just do a simple traversal on our grid, right? We'll just traverse simply on our grid, and we will have some ifs and else conditions. On the basis of them, we will decide what will be the count of the ships. Okay, so let's say I have an answer which is going to represent my count of the ships in this board, right? So I have this answer. Now if my board of I comma j, right, I'm traversing this on a loop, right? So if board of I comma j is equals to an x, right, if it is equals to x, then I will do some work. And what is that? First I will check that if board of, or if I is equals to 0 and j is equals to 0. Okay, else either I can be only 0, right? Else if either j can be only 0, right? Else both of them are not 0. Okay, so this will be the cases that either both of them are 0 or only one of them is 0, right? Or none of them are 0. So let's see. Let's take this here. Okay, so if I is equals to 0 and j is equals to 0, if we have a x here, right, then we are simply going to add our answer, right? I'm simply going to increment my answer, because if my x is here at this starting point, if my x is at this starting point, then on the basis of that x, I can decide that if x is here, then I can merge it with this, right? So I need to check that if an x is present at the 0th position. So I'll just simply do my answer plus plus. Okay, if I is equals to 0, which means I'm talking about this row, I'm talking about the first row, right? If my I is equals to 0, then let's say my x is here, and I also have a x here and I also have a x here, right? Or let's say I just have two x's. Now at this position, I'm going to check that if my previous one is x or not, right? If this x, if this at this position, do we have a x or not, right? If there is an x at this position, or if there is an x at the previous one, right, I'm going to say that if my for my previous, I will have two options. right? Previous can be x or it cannot be x, right? If I have this, right, and I have an x here, and here I don't have an x at my previous, right? If I do have an x at my period, let's say I'm at this position, right? I have a previous, at my previous I have a x, right? So if I have a x at my previous, then it means that this is going to be one ship. Then I'm not going to do anything, right? I'm not going to increment my answer because there is a ship, there is already an x behind me. So I'm going to include it in my ship, right? If there is not there is not a ship behind me, there it's not a x behind me, then I'm going to say that I am a ship itself, right? I'm going to include myself as a new ship. So if we have nothing behind me, or if we have nothing behind me, then I'm going to say that my answer is going to be added, else it will we will not do anything, right? So if there is x, then I will not do anything, right? If there is not x, if we have this condition, right, if there isn't any x, then I'm just going to increment my answer, right? Same with this case, right? I can either have a x or not x at my previous, when I'm talking about j equals 0. When a j equals is 0, then I'm talking about this case, right? I'm talking about this column, zeroth column. When my x is here, let's say, and for this my previous is going to be the one before me, right? So the one before me at the zeroth column, zeroth row, was the one column before me, right? The previous one was just one column before me, but here the previous one will be one row before me, right? Here I have x here and I have x here, right? So this one is this is my previous, right? This is my previous, but here this is also my previous. At a zeroth row, the last column was my previous. At the zeroth column, my last row will be the previous. Okay, so I will check that if at this position, is the previous one x or not. If the previous one is x, then I'm going to say that it is going to be included in a ship, so nothing will happen, right? If the previous is empty, if the previous is not x, then I'm going to include myself as an answer. Okay, so if it is x, then I won't do anything. If my previous is not equals to x, then I'm going to increment my answer, right? Now for the else case, right? For the else case, let's say I have a x here and I have x here. Now I'm at this position. I'm at this position, right? For this position, I have to check for this side as well or for this side as well, right? I will have two previouses. That I will have to check for this previous and I have to check for this previous. That either both of them should not be equal to x, right? Both of them should not be equal to x for me to say that it is included in a ship. So if x is a ship in and of itself, then I'm going to say that the previous one, the one in the the last row, and the one in the last column, both of them should not be equal to x. Okay, so I will say that previous of row and previous of column should not be equal to x. Then I'm going to increment my answer. Okay, the previous one, so this is my answer, this is my pseudocode, that if my I is equal to 0 and j is equals to 0, then I'm at my zeroth row and zeroth column. Then I'm just going to simply add my answer. Else, if my I is 0, then I'm going to check in that row itself that if my previous column is equals to x or not. If it is not equals to x, then I'm going to increment my answer. Else, I'm going to check in the zeroth column that if my previous row has a x or not, right? On my last row, if I have a x or not, right? If I don't have an x, then I'm going to increment my answer. Else, for every cases, then I'm going to check that if my previous row and my previous column don't have a x or not. Okay, so this is very simple. Let's just try to code this. Okay, so the first thing is I need my answer, and I'm going to return this answer right after doing some work. Also, I need my m, that it will be board.length, and my n will be board of 0 dot length. Right? Now I will have a for loop for I equals 0, I is less than m, plus I. Another for I is j is equals to 0, j is less than n, plus j. Right? Now, if board of I comma j is equals to x, right? If this is true, if board of I comma j is equals to x, then I'm going to check all the four conditions, right? If I is 0, if I is equals to 0 and j is equals to 0, else if I is equals to 0 only, else if j is equals to 0 only, right? Else both are not 0. So if both are 0, then I'm simply going to increment my answer. If both are not 0, then I'm going to check that if the previous one, board of I comma j is equals to x or not. Right? And the previous one for I is equals to 0, it means the previous, I'm talking about the row. Right? Since I'm talking about the row, the previous one will be the last column. So j minus 1. Right? If it is not equals to x, then I'm going to increment my answer. So this will be the same for my j as well. Right? But for here, we will have I minus 1 instead of j minus 1. Right? Because I'm checking in the previous row now. And if, for this case, board of I comma j minus 1 and board of I minus 1 comma j is not equals to x, right? This as well is not equals to x. Then I'm simply going to add the answer, right? For this, I'm checking for the both previous's. So this looks fine. Let's just run this code. Successful. Let's submit this. Okay, it is also submitted. So I hope you understand this question. If you don't, I would suggest rewatch the part which you don't understand. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.